Hello, welcome to Echo Conversations. I am excited to have Pete Miller, CEO of NeedHim Ministries, here with us. And today we're going to be talking about a really cool advertising campaign they did. So this is almost like a case study of how they've been able to do a special advertising campaign and kind of the results, the things they've learned, the pros and the cons through that. So Pete, welcome. Glad to have you with
Thanks
us
for
today.
having me.
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about Pandora advertising. You guys have done some advertising on Pandora Radio, and I just want to know, how did that go? What was it? Let's talk all about it.
Yeah, it's been interesting. So we as a ministry have grown in the areas we've tried to present the gospel. We really tried to go to places people wouldn't expect to hear it or see it. I think the first time we did that, we went on MTV. And of course, donors were somewhat shocked that we would be putting the gospel message there. But our philosophy is we don't need to preach to those who've already heard the good news. We want to reach those who haven't.
Right.
So it was suggested we could buy some advertising time rather cheaply on Pandora. So Pandora being obviously satellite radio, a mix of different styles and music genres. And we said, hey, this sounds interesting. We found somebody who wanted to support the idea.
Right.
And so when we went about creating a spot, we were fortunate enough to get a well-known pastor with a very familiar Scottish accent to cut a very, very simple commercial. It literally was just a few seconds of silence to grab the attention of the listener. And then his voice came on and said, hey, do you ever wonder if God exists, if he cares about you, if he knows what's going on? And it invited the person listening to simply tap their screen, and it immediately opened up a text message right to the ministry. So for us, we love the concept because it took away the need for someone to remember a website or a phone number or something where they would have to reach out and take a second step to get a hold of us. This literally connected them immediately via a text message with the ministry.
That's right, yeah, because we could target them just on their phone, listening to Pandora. So that ad came on, and then we just made it where you just touch that, and then boom, it's opened up. It's in there. It's literally in their text messaging and just sitting there, just waiting for them. The cursor's blinking, waiting for them to just type the message and hit send. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and what stations did you advertise on?
Yeah, it's an interesting story because as we started the conversations with Pandora, their assumption was we wanted Christian radio, and we politely said we'll take anything other than Christian radio. So there's a wide assortment. We seem to be on a very eclectic mix of stations, if you will. Everything from very hardcore rock and what you might call headbanger music to symphonies and some odd mix of channels at different times of the day. So it's really all over the board.
So, and then just to be clear, what happens is they're texting in. Of course, we're using Echo as the platform for that. They're texting into that, and then your volunteers are answering that from within Echo, and it's texting back to their phone, but it's routing to the specific volunteer that's having that conversation.
Right.
So, what kind of I can't imagine what types of conversations have you had? What's the gamut that this has run?
Yeah, it's everything under the sun. There's a lot of for some people, there's a lot of, I think, surprise that they're suddenly hearing a message or an invitation to start talking about God on a channel where they probably don't hear a lot of commercials in the first place and certainly don't hear them about God. So people come with really heartfelt issues. People come with some anger. Anybody who's been shaking their fist at God or frustrated with God, they'll often express that in their very first comment back to us.
Wow.
So it's really an invitation to start a conversation. Some of those last for days and weeks, and some of those may end after a few back and forths because the person simply doesn't really want to engage. They're just so frustrated they don't want to hear truth or dig into the details of the gospel.
I guess that's part of the risk of being on a station that's more it has at least the potential to have an audience that's more anti-God, is you are going to get some hard soil, some hard ground that's just really been hard. Their heart has really been hardened. But you're also going to get those people that are hurt and frustrated, that are willing to give it a shot. And I guess so. When they come in and they're really angry, even. you probably aren't frustrated with that. Like, that's probably still, what's your feeling when you see that?
No, we're not surprised at all.
Okay.
It's a chance to start a dialogue with somebody who maybe has never had one.
Right.
Their misunderstanding of God is the fuel for their anger.
Sure.
And the chance to start sharing truth and that he does care and he does exist and here's what Jesus did for them is often eye-opening to them. They may take a while to respond the next time. But because it's a text conversation, there's no time limit. There's no reason to say goodbye before we share the gospel.
Right.
So we'll hang with those longer. We also get to manage them more flexibly as a text message. And we've seen some pretty interesting stories come about by people who just continued the conversation.
So I want to go to those stories, but before we do that, I think you said a couple of key things that get us excited about texting. One is that there is flexibility. Unlike a online chat where you have to have somebody there in real time, this texting allows it to be, we're tech nerds, so we would call it asynchronous. It gives you the ability to have that conversation when it fits both of your schedules. So it's similar in real life. Someone may text me like right now while we're filming this, but I'm not going to text them back until we're finished with this, right? And so there's this kind of understanding that like nothing's happening until it needs to. So that's a really powerful tool both for you as a ministry being able to really staff it appropriately, so you're not having to staff all these people online because you don't know when the commercial's going to air. It's not like a television, something where you know at this specific time this ad is going to play, and even then I guess you don't always know that, but it's random, right? We don't know when these commercials
exactly.
are going to
We're
happen.
buying in some cases some leftover inventory that they don't know is unsold until the day before. So we often get, because we're buying that unsold inventory, some odd hours of the day. Very late at night or early in the morning, depending on your perspective. But as it turns out, those are the people we're trying to reach when they're listening to music. So it actually works very well for us.
That's really cool. So you mentioned there's some stories. We always love hearing some stories. So
yeah, I think the most dramatic of them are, you start walking with somebody who comes seemingly with no hope and a lot of brokenness in their life. And because, again, it's a text message, you can carry on this conversation for days and weeks. I think the most dramatic example we saw was a young man who literally after 2 months of talking to a volunteer decided to commit to Christ. And the first day he was going to attend church was Easter Sunday.
Wow.
And sure enough, our volunteer was wise enough to realize there may be a lot of hesitation on his part to going to church for the first time in Easter. So he had coordinated with the local church and they were expecting him. He reached out that morning to this young man and said, hey, there's people waiting for you. Here's where they're going to be. I really want you to follow through on this. And although he was very hesitant and wasn't going to follow through at first, he went ahead and went. And he met the people that were waiting for him. They went out to Easter brunch afterwards. He met a man who actually offered him a job, and he was without one at the time. Wow. And as they talked afterwards, days afterwards, he said, wow, that was a really powerful experience. I don't know that I've ever had people just welcome me with no questions asked, with just who I was and all my problems. And it was really, really a special day.
Wow.
And this person then said, but I really need to tell you something that I haven't told you in all this time. Not unusual for us to hear that, but I don't know that we were prepared for this. He said, the day I heard your ad, I was sitting at home with a gun in my mouth and just thinking about ending it. I had no hope. Nothing was working in life. Relationships were broke. I didn't have a job. And I just didn't see a reason to keep living. And I was so shocked by hearing this idea of God coming out of a radio station that was playing music that had nothing to do with God or hope.
Right.
It was dark music. It was, it sort of fit the mood he was in. He said, and I literally stopped in my tracks and said, I've got to touch my phone. I've got to see what this is about. And that's where it led.
Wow, that's amazing. And I think it's so cool to see those God stories that are just, you just can't ever know what's going on in that person that's coming and talking to you. There's so much you said in there, but I think, being where the people who need God most are and being a voice to be open and ready to have a conversation is huge. I think the other huge thing you mentioned is being able to walk with the person I mean, if we think through history, there's never been a time where we can walk alongside a person in the way that the texting could, where the volunteer can like convince them, find a church online, look up where they are and find a church for them, get them there and text them along the way, coordinate with people there, and then remind them, hey, I'm praying for you. Don't worry. Don't be encouraged. Get out of the car, go inside. Those are huge things that we've just never had the opportunity to do before. It's
As
so
a ministry
amazing.
who was really focused on phone calls for a decade,
right?
They have a very natural ending, whether it's 10 or 20 or 30 minutes later. Online chat is very similar. It has an ending. Text messaging doesn't, right? We ultimately decide when we stop communicating with that person. So we tell volunteers to be patient. There's no reason to end the conversation before you get to share the good news.
Sure.
And we obviously can't make someone believe, but we can certainly show them that we care enough to stick around.
Right. That's awesome. So for everyone today that's listening to this, I think the reason why I love this story so much of this Pandora experience of advertising there is it's a way, I don't know that I would have thought of Pandora, I guess. And so I would just say make sure you're looking at channels and opportunities where people are gathering that are the kind of people that your ministry can best help. In NeedHim's case, they're looking to evangelize and share the gospel with people that need it most. Your ministry may be focused on a different aspect. Whatever that is, find where those people are gathering and then go and make yourself available to them and be creative, because you just never know. And lastly, something we didn't really directly say that I wanted to make sure and mention is the ad itself was very creative in the sense that it was extremely different. It did not have music playing underneath it. There was silence involved. There was the speaker speaking in a very distinct accent saying, do you have questions? We'd love to talk to you. And so be open, be available to your audience, and go find them where they are. Try creative things. You just never know what may happen. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day. Thanks for watching. Make sure and like and subscribe to our channel. Click that bell so that you'll be notified every time we have a new video coming out. And I wanted to make you aware that we have some incredibly awesome resources totally free for you, whether you are or are not an Echo customer. Just go to echoglobal.org/resources and you can look at all of them totally free. echoglobal.org/resources. Like seriously, like now is a great time to go. echoglobal.org/resources.